This is I have an op-ed piece which I've submitted, a piece which I've submitted to the Wall Street Journal as an op-ed. I haven't heard from them yet. It has to do with how we can spend a little money and a little time and be able to value these strange instruments where things go into things, as we saw in these prior projects. So I want to go through this proposal and then defend the notion that even though it's going to take 12 to 18 months, it will still be relevant at that time. So the current crisis is the result of three ill winds coming together, making the perfect storm. One is the bursting of the real estate bubble. The second is this subprime mess and the near subprime mess. And then the third is these complex and exotic financial instruments like collateralized mortgage obligations, credit default swaps, and derivative securities built up on credit default swaps, and so on. And nobody knows, what's going on. Let's go back a little bit. This inability to price things, to understand, what a piece of paper that you have or a counterparty has is worth, that's very important. Like, for example, after Bear Stearns revealed the tip of the iceberg, the flow of credit started to dry up, and the Fed decided that there was a liquidity crisis, so it inflated. Now, the inflation did not cure the problem, because the problem was not liquidity, the problem was ignorance. The liquidity crisis, the pumping up of the liquidity drove up the price of oil, drove up the price of commodities. It got even to the point where the US dollar was on a par with the Canadian dollar, which I never thought would ever happen, but it still didn't cure the problem, because the problem was nobody knew how to value securities. So I have this proposal which says, step one, this is dirt cheap as compared to $700 billion. Step one is some outfit like the Census Bureau should take a census of what goes into what in the first instance. So everybody who has a collateralized mortgage obligation pool, knows who they're supposed to shift the money to and who they're supposed to get the money from. So in the first instance, there should be a census, there's a survey, and it'd be big, but not as big as, for example, the annual survey of manufacturers that the census does every year. And so it can be done. The second is to calculate, is to have some, not the Census Bureau, but some little think tank, maybe located at UCSD or someplace, I don't know, work through with the computers and math the direct and indirect consequences. In other words, you own a piece of paper, and that piece of paper has in it a tranche from some other piece of paper, and so on and so forth. It is a mathematically solvable problem, as I say in the op-ed. It's going to be an op-ed. You have to trust me on this one. One of my alternate lives had to do with solving enormous systems of equations when most of the coefficients were zero, and we can do it. We can do it. Okay. Now, it's not enough. Step three is to aggregate these results into meaningful categories. It's not enough to know that if you buy this piece of paper, if you have this tranche, you own little pieces of thousands of mortgages all over California. You'd like to have them aggregated by zip code and payment history and so on and so forth. And then these results should be disseminated to the relevant parties, like the stockholders of a given company, the counterparties of a given company, the regulators, and then in an aggregate form, the economists should get a hold of it, so maybe they can figure out in finer detail what's going wrong and what might happen if. And now I figure this will take. Nope, that's mine. This will take maybe 12 to 18 months, but 12 to 18 months from now, somebody's going to have those pieces of paper. Maybe they'll be in private hands, maybe they'll be in public hands. If they're in public hands, they will want somebody to buy them. They don't want to be in public hands forever. The lesson that the Japanese fiasco, starting in the Japanese fiasco showed us was that if there's something structurally wrong, the economy can go limp along for a decade, and it doesn't get better. Now, what was structurally wrong with the Japanese economy was that banks owned shares of zombies, of corporations which were essentially bankrupt, but they didn't want to show them on the bank's book. What's structurally wrong with our economy is, at least one thing, is that we have all these arrows pointing to all these other arrows to point to all these other arrows, and nobody knows what anything is worth, and it's worth taking 12 or 18 months to figure out what's going on. Thank you.